Well, how about that? England have only gone and done it. We've just come straight from the stadium into the media hub, and here we are to talk about England making it to a second final in 3 tournaments. I never thought this kind of thing could ever happen in my lifetime, but it's happening now. It's a golden time. It's magical. And England got the job done. Didn't even need extra time or penalties this time, Stuart Pearce. But there was late drama, wasn't there?
There certainly was. The first half performance, I've got to say, from the time that the Dutch scored their goal, I think England took control of the game. They come out, they were magnificent. I thought Foden and Mainu and Saka took the fight to the Dutch. And I think in that period of time, I thought they were going to go on and get our nose in front at that period. Second half, we dropped away and it went right to the wire. And then the combination between Palmer with his pass that split the lines and the movement of Watkins and the turn and the finish, timing, magnificent.
It was wonderful. Great goal from Ollie Watkins. And Jim Proudfoot, our talkSPORT commentator, absolutely nailed the commentary of it as ever and got a bit emotional afterwards, didn't you, mate?
Well, I did get emotional. I'm not ashamed of that either. I mean, it's just extraordinary, and we've made the point so many times. You only really appreciate the genuinely good days in football when you've sat through some pretty lean and farrow ones. And I've been privileged to see England play all over the world. I was there in Bloemfontein. I was there in Nice. I've seen some pretty rotten performances on home soil as well, like the Hungary defeat at Molineux. So when you've seen those as a supporter, to then get the moment like that tonight just makes it all the better. And I'm like you, we're a very similar age despite appearances, and you can't think that is 3 semi-finals, now 2 finals over the course of 8 years. Just to put it in perspective, 6 victories in the knockout stages of major tournaments over 50 years before Gareth took over. He's had 9 in 8 years. So he's upped it by 150% from what it had been since 1970, and he's done it over an 8-year period. It's just utterly extraordinary. And the first half performance was fantastic. The second wasn't. Having sat through the second half thinking this is only going to go one way, really, it felt as though it was like water. It was just going down a plug hole, and that England's chances were sort of spiralling, and all of a sudden they disappear. And then the 2 substitutes combine and do that. And I think Ollie Watkins' story is absolutely magnificent. He's had an unconventional route. Starting in Devon, went to Exeter City, loan spells at the likes of Weston, and then to come from there to Brentford, to Villa, and then to come off the bench and do that. Score his first competitive goal for his country in more than 3 years at that moment is just, it defies belief, really. It was a scriptwriter's dream. It was almost one of those moments that was just sort of transcended reality. Absolutely fantastic. What a privilege to see it.
Yeah, it was a privilege to be there to watch it and to bring it to you on talkSPORT. But also, it's just a privilege to be watching England at this time, this golden time. And talking about the goal, Gareth has to take some credit for the substitutions. And I think there were some puzzled faces when Foden went off. But it's the 2 substitutes, Stuart, who've combined for the goal, the winning goal.
Yeah, they certainly did. I mean, I for one was astounded when Foden come off, because I thought he was certainly our best player in the first half. Second half, I think he'd have benefited by Palmer coming on and combining with him. But listen, the 2 subs combined for the goal. Goals change games. We've been bemoaning that the level of finishing in this tournament's not been up to scratch. That was as good as you're getting, by the way. Split the lines by Palmer's pass, and then typical centre forwards play. Good movement to receive on the turn, and listen, he had dynamite in his boots.
He did. Let's talk about the other goals. First of all, the one we conceded, England went behind yet again, had to come from behind to win it. And it's a cracking strike from Xavi Simons. But we were talking on a show on talkSPORT this week, we were talking to a goalkeeping coach, David Pearce, and one of the things that was brought up was the lack of inches for Jordan Pickford, and maybe Jim, a bigger keeper, gets something on it. He did his best to get something on it, got a little something on it, but not enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And David Pearce also made the point that, there's nothing he can do about it. He can't grow Inspector Gadget arms. He can't all of a sudden turn up and come out for the final and he'll be 6'5" instead of 6'2". So there's nothing he can do. But the observation, I think, is a very valid one, that taller goalkeepers might just have saved that. I think that was the only mistake with a small M that he made. And I think that he had a pretty fine night, Jordan Pickford. But yeah, it was unfortunate that England got off to a losing start, but we've made the point that England tend to play their best football when their backs are against the wall, and would they have been as impressive in the rest of that 45 minutes had they not gone 1-0 down?
And they were impressive in the first half, very impressive. Phil Foden, I thought it was a 10 out of 10 first half from Phil Foden. This is what we've wanted from Phil Foden for a long time, but not just him, Kobbie Mainoo as well. For somebody who's 19 to play the way he did, especially in the first half, magnificent.
Yeah, the combination of the two I thought was really good on that right-hand side, sort of inside right position, if you like, with Saka as well, combining with them. That was where the real threat from England was going to come from. Unfortunate, clipping the post and obviously having one cleared off the line. There's not much more you can do if you feel Foden. And listen, if we're going to win on Sunday, the likes of Phil Foden and others are going to have to replicate that.
Let's talk about the penalty. Kane put it home, but was it a penalty? I'll ask you in a second, Jim, but Stuart, first of all, was it a pen?
I thought it was. Anywhere on the pitch it would have been given. Dumfries has had 6 of the best up, and Harry Kane's got the contact first, and obviously on the follow through there was contact between the two of them. But for me, I think it is in this as the laws of the game stand nowadays.
I was surprised that it took them so long to make the decision, and we talked in the commentary about the fact that contact had been made and Harry Kane had gone down and was clearly writhing around in some pain. But it took 2 minutes for any notification for us, whilst Kane was receiving treatment, that it was still being looked at. We just thought it had been looked at summarily and dismissed, and that it wasn't going to be a penalty. When you saw the replay from the right angle, Dumfries goes in with his boot like that, he's got to win it, because if he doesn't and Kane gets there, and even if it's Kane that is initiating the contact because it's his follow through that comes up and kicks the bottom of Dumfries' boot, that is always going to be given. And Dumfries might consider himself a little bit unlucky, by the way, I'm sure he did, judging by his reaction, but I wouldn't like it as an England fan if it was given against me, but I do genuinely think it was the right call.
I think, just like 66, it was over the line. It was a definite penalty. Don't even know. I don't know why we're debating it. It was a definite penalty. Stuart, tell me what went wrong for England in the second half. And I'll caveat that because I don't think, even though the Netherlands stifled us, I don't think they caused us that many problems. So I don't think it was probably as desperately bad as some observers might have thought. But it didn't go right for England. They couldn't continue what they were doing. But what went wrong?
For me, it was the tempo of the build from the back. I think we ended up building too slowly, not committing midfield players. I think Declan ended up coming back and receiving the ball, but not getting turned and then driving with the ball to commit a midfield player. And then a chain of events happen if you do that. And then someone gets free and gets some space beyond that. The flip side of that is by building up slowly, all of a sudden the people advance to that, Foden, Mainoo, Bellingham, all of a sudden they start coming deep, and then we're not getting into the critical areas and getting turned like we did in the first half. And it was just a general malaise of slow build up and slow play. It was and that's something that we've got to, I'm sure Gareth and his coaching staff will sit there and say, look, what was the difference between our first half performance and our second half performance, and where was the problem? And I'm not sure whether we sort of ended up switching from almost a 4 at the back build to a 3 that we did in the first half. But either way, if you look at the average positions of Walker, let's say, he was much, much deeper, And if you draw a line across the pitch, I always say this, if you draw a line across the pitch just inside our half on the build-up, and you've got Weghorst at one side of it, and you've got Walker, the 2 centre-halves and a left-back, and maybe Declan Rice coming to receive, you've got 5 players with their whole team behind the ball, and that's not acceptable. You've got to be aggressive in your starting positions.
So he made the change at half-time, Stu, bringing Luke Shaw on to replace Kieran Trippier, and we just had a very brief conversation about the tactics of it in a way from the stadium back here. And you made the point that, when they're defending with a 3 in the first half, or ostensibly with a 3 and then building, it was the best football that we've seen from the moment that we conceded. But when it became a 4, it just went back to the more turgid pedestrian build-up that we'd seen. So why would they have decided to make that change? In bringing Shaw on, did they think they were going to be able to get more attacking width and so they didn't need to play with 3? Or was it just sort of a default revert to type and, well, we're playing the better football, we'll see this through, and then it all sort of dissipated. It was a strange one.
Yeah, it was strange. I think when you do build with a 4, you have to get your fullbacks very high and very aggressive, and then obviously the wider players come off their perches and come to look to receive in danger areas. But the one thing that underpins all of that is the lack of tempo in what you're trying to achieve. And we were almost down to a walking pace, and the players advanced of the centre halves were holding their arms out saying, well, come on, and the centre halves are saying, well, I haven't got a pass on, because that energy to find spaces and find pockets of spaces that we showed in the first half and done brilliantly, as good as we've done in this tournament, we weren't doing. But listen, it's something for the coaches to work on, something for the coaches to look at and say, how can we have 30 minutes that turns that into 90 minutes come Sunday, because we might well need 90 minutes of top quality football to take this trophy home.
Stuart, talk to me about Ollie Watkins and how he's feeling right now.
I always find when you come to these tournaments, it's not about the starting 11, never is. And you know full well that your starting 11 for the first game is never going to be the finishing 11 if you get to the final. It never happens. You get suspensions, injuries, form, you name it, the whole lot. You need a contribution from everyone in your squad, and I mean everybody. I mean the players that haven't even kicked a ball, that are all part of training, that support from afar, that are all... You've got to get over the line with 26 players. It doesn't work any other way. You see Ramsdale supporting the goalkeeper as well, warming him up and everything. All of those little things, they're marginal gains in any squad. And Watkins has played his part, and listen, he's a smashing kid, and he deserves that little moment of glory, because when he was called upon, and he would have sat there with Ivan Toney coming on before him in previous games and thought, hey, I didn't think I'd done that badly when I did come on first time out, and now I'm outside the picture now. When am I going to get an opportunity? All of a sudden, if you keep your professionalism, your opportunity will come when you probably least expect it, and that was tonight. He'll be feeling great about himself, to answer your question, there's no doubt. And he's got England to the final on Sunday, and credit to him for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a tweet after, or something on X, after the last game when Ivan Toney was one of the penalty heroes. And it was from a Villa fan saying, can you remind Gareth Southgate that he's got Ollie Watkins on the bench? Now, Gareth Southgate knows who he's got on the bench. And I think some of us, Jim, thought that Ivan Toney would come on. And maybe we're surprised to see Ollie Watkins come on. But I've just got to give the manager credit again, because he's made that choice. And just say we don't score and Netherlands do get a winner and go through, he'd be slaughtered for that substitution. Why don't you bring on Toney? He's made a bold decision with an attacking substitution at the end of the game, and it's absolutely paid off for him. But he knows who he's got in his squad and what they can do.
Horses for courses, isn't it? I mean, the way that the game was developing, the Dutch were probably in the last 10 minutes having the majority of possession when he made the change and brought Harry Kane off, and he needed someone who had the ability to be able to stretch and get in behind the back line, which is how the goal came. And, Ollie's had 4 touches, 2 of which, or possibly 3, were involved in scoring that goal. So his contribution either side of the goal has been limited, but it doesn't matter when you come up with a moment like that. And, we made the point. Only 2 other people have ever scored a winning goal for England in a semi-final. Bobby Charlton, Harry Kane. What company to be in. It's just extraordinary. But a great substitution. I was surprised. When he made the change, I thought, OK, didn't see that coming at all. But, you've got to hand it to him. He's been criticised on a consistent basis throughout his England reign for the changes that he's made. So let's pay tribute to him. He got that one absolutely spot on.
Life-changing moment for Ollie Watkins, but there's a final in Berlin on Sunday. Stuart Pearce, would you change the lineup for Sunday? Does Shaw come into the starting lineup for Sunday? Do they go 3 at the back? Is he going to go back to a flat back 4? There's all sorts of questions still to be asked of Gareth Southgate ahead of the final. And the other thing is, can we win it?
I think we can win it. I think the Spaniards will go in as favourites. There's no doubt about that. They proved that over the period of this tournament, that they've been the most consistent side up to now. From our point of view, I think we'll start again with a 3 at the back. I really do. I think Shaw will come into it and he'll be in the starting lineup. I think that's been a real positive, that he's got enough football under his belt in the game tonight to start, which is tough on trips, you know what I mean, because he's been more than adequate in doing the job. But I think he'll go with Shaw. Apart from that, I think it'll be the same starting lineup.
They do have a never say die, England. As long as they can stay in the game, I think they've got a chance.
There are only 2 teams that have a chance of winning it. 22 have gone home. Another 30 didn't qualify. England are one of those 2. They haven't got as much chance on paper as they had against Italy at Wembley, but there isn't that same level of expectation. And that might suit them. England have shown that they play their better football in this tournament when the chips are down and when their backs are against the wall. And that's some achievement to come from behind in 3 successive rounds, having conceded the first goal, and make it through them all. Listen, it is a puncher's chance. Spain absolutely justifiably are the favourites. That might just work in England's favour.
You're a left-back of some renown with a nickname Psycho. If you're up against Lamine Yamal early on, do you leave one on him?
No, what you do is put Luke Shaw out there and say, good luck, son.
He's going to be difficult to stop. Are we happy?
Of course we are. Well, listen, we're going to a major final. We were at the final anyway. The pride that we've got to represent our country, albeit in a small way, on the media side, is fantastic. I'm delighted for these group of players. I'm delighted for a friend of mine, Gareth, that's taking the team there, and these backup staff. They've been consistent for 8 years now. Consistent for 8 years. Takes some doing,
Happiest debrief for England of the whole tournament. Loved it in Dortmund. And we've got another England debrief to come after the final in Berlin. We'll see you there.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.